The story begins in the year 1973, when the people of Japan were living in fear because of a terrifying attack. Everywhere, ordinary people were running for their lives as burning buildings collapsed around them. At that moment, a little boy named Kosuke stood far away, staring at the sky in shock. In this world, terrifying monsters known as kaiju constantly bring destruction and chaos. Suddenly, a huge fireball came flying through the sky and slammed into one of the monsters, knocking it to the ground. At the same time, a giant turtle called Gamera slowly moved toward the battlefield. The flying monsters in the sky attacked Gamera with powerful laser beams, making the giant turtle roar in pain. More kaiju kept attacking him from every direction. Soon, Gamera crashed onto the ground under the brutal assault, and the flying monsters swarmed him as if they wanted to tear him apart piece by piece. But somehow, the giant turtle managed to stand up again. Even then, the enemy attacks did not stop. Because of this, Gamera began charging all of his energy. Slowly, his entire body started glowing brighter and brighter, almost like the sun itself. Then suddenly, a massive explosion erupted. Every enemy around him was destroyed, and Gamera himself was wiped out as well. He sacrificed his own life to save humanity. Many years later, Kosuke had grown into an adult. He now had a son named Toru. One day, he took Toru to visit his mother's grave. Kosuke gently told him that his mother was now in heaven. But Toru did not believe in things like that. According to him, his mother was simply lying in the grave as nothing more than a pile of bones. The next day at school, while heading for swimming lessons, Toru noticed a strange light coming from an island across the water. The light kept flashing again and again, almost as if it was calling him. Curious, Toru decided to skip school and head toward the island. After some time, he swam all the way there and climbed up the rocky cliffs. Slowly, he moved closer to the glowing object. He soon discovered that it was actually a large egg resting on top of a shining red stone. As Toru carefully looked at them, the egg suddenly began to crack open. A tiny turtle crawled out from inside. Toru quickly helped the little creature, and within moments, the two became friends. But then, he noticed something unusual. There was a strange pattern on the turtle's stomach. Soon after, Toru brought the creature home and named him Toto. However, he never imagined that the animal would start growing at such an unbelievable speed in just a single day. The next morning, when Toru's father came into his room to clean it, Toru desperately tried to hide the turtle from him. But then, something unbelievable happened. The turtle suddenly started floating in the air. At that exact moment, Toru's neighbor Mai saw everything and screamed in fear. Hearing her scream, the frightened creature quickly flew straight toward Toru. Thankfully, Toru caught him just in time. He immediately told Mai to stay quiet, and together they successfully hid the turtle from Toru's father. Completely confused, Kosuke eventually walked away. After that, Toru finally showed Toto properly to Mai. She was shocked to see the turtle flying through the air as if he had a jet engine attached underneath him. Later, Toru decided to tell all his friends about the strange creature. The boys were left speechless after seeing the flying turtle, and they all instantly wanted to become his friend. But Mai was older and far more careful. She did not like the children treating the creature carelessly because she believed Toto might actually be dangerous. Then she showed Toru a report about Gamera and explained that his pet looked very similar to the monster. Gamera also had the power to fly. Mai warned Toru to let the creature go, but Toru refused to listen. To him, Toto was nothing more than an innocent pet, not some terrifying monster. Unfortunately, only a few days later, that belief started proving wrong. Toto continued growing bigger and bigger at an incredible speed. Eventually, he became far too large for Toru to keep at home anymore. Left with no other choice, Toru and his friends secretly moved the creature to their hidden base. The boys were amazed to see how quickly their turtle was growing, but Mai was still deeply worried about what Toto really was. Once again, she tried convincing Toru that the creature could be dangerous. However, Toru still refused to believe that Toto was actually Gamera. He could not bear the thought of his beloved pet being killed like the original Gamera. That was when Mai suddenly became emotional. She told him, "I can't always protect you. Start using your brain, okay?" After saying that, she ran away, leaving Toru completely confused about why she reacted so emotionally. The next day, Toru finally learned the truth after seeing Mai on her way to school. He discovered that her parents were extremely worried about her health. Very soon, Mai was going to undergo heart surgery, and if anything went wrong, she could lose her life. Seeing Mai's family made Toru remember his own dead mother. For the very first time, he truly realized how badly he wished his mother were still alive. After that, Toru picked up the red stone he had found together with Todo. He decided to give it to Mai. Deep inside, he hoped the stone might somehow protect her during the surgery and keep her alive. Mai thanked him for the gift and promised that she would return the stone after recovering. But in her heart, she felt a strange fear, as if something terrible was about to happen. The next day, Toru went to the secret hideout only to freeze in shock. Todo had disappeared. Immediately, Toru and his friends started searching everywhere for him. But no matter how hard they tried, they could not find Todo anywhere. At the same time, none of them realized that a deadly danger was rapidly approaching. Meanwhile, out in the ocean, a man was desperately trying to save his life after his ship had been destroyed. Suddenly, he noticed something strange moving beneath the water. The sea itself began rising upward unnaturally. Terrified, the man quickly tried to swim away, but in the very next moment, something dragged him beneath the water. All that remained behind was blood. Soon after, the Navy was informed about the incident, and reports of the missing people immediately began spreading everywhere. The search operation immediately began, but very soon, the authorities discovered the horrifying truth behind the incident. Sirens started echoing throughout the city, and people began running for their lives in complete panic. From far away, Toru also witnessed the destruction spreading across the city. At the same time, Kosuke managed to reach the children just in time and quickly started leading them downstairs to safety. Chaos had erupted everywhere. In the middle of the terrified crowd, one of Toru's friends suddenly fell to the ground. Toru instantly ran toward him to help, but at that exact moment, a massive chunk of concrete came flying through the air and crashed nearby, crushing several people. The attack had been caused by a terrifying kaiju called Zetus. The monster was enormous. Zetus slowly moved toward the terrified civilians and opened his horrifying mouth wide, as if the humans lying on the ground were nothing more than food to him. He began devouring people alive. Thankfully, Toru noticed that his friend was still alive. Kosuke told the children to stay where they were while he carefully rushed toward the injured boy. Just as he lifted the child onto his shoulders, the kaiju suddenly lunged directly toward them. But then, another creature suddenly appeared in front of them. The moment Kosuke saw it, he froze in shock. Behind him stood a gigantic turtle-like monster, roaring furiously at its enemy. Kosuke immediately realized that the creature looked exactly like Gamera, the same guardian monster that once sacrificed itself to protect humanity. Meanwhile, Zetus let out an angry growl. Without hesitation, the giant turtle charged forward and bit down hard on the monster's leg, causing Zetus to scream in pain. Furious, Zetus repeatedly slammed the turtle against the ground in an attempt to get rid of him. Finally, he hurled the turtle straight into a building, but the creature quickly recovered and stood up once again. That was when Toru noticed the familiar symbol on the turtle's body. In an instant, he realized the truth. This giant monster was actually Todo, his pet turtle, who was either Gamera's child or perhaps Gamera reborn. Toru immediately ran toward him, desperate to help his friend. Meanwhile, Gamera was slowly being cornered by the monstrous lizard. Zetus roared in rage and swung his tail with incredible force, sending the turtle flying onto a bridge. But Gamera was not ready to give up so easily. Zetus quickly rushed toward him and climbed onto the bridge to deliver the final blow. Then he lashed out with his tongue, badly injuring Gamera. Now the giant turtle struggled desperately to defend himself, while the entire bridge slowly began collapsing beneath them. But suddenly, Gamera grabbed Zetus's tongue. Then, without warning, he fired a blazing fireball directly into the monster's face. The attack badly wounded Zetus, sending him crashing into the water below. At last, Gamera had won the battle. However, he himself had been severely injured. Toru immediately ran toward his friend, but the military stopped him and quickly sealed off the entire area. Soon, soldiers surrounded the giant turtle, while Gamera struggled to even move. Not long after, the army restrained Gamera on top of a massive transport truck and took him away. Seeing this, Toru ran desperately beside the vehicle, staring at the unconscious turtle the entire time. The poor boy kept shouting Todo's name over and over again. For a brief moment, Todo heard his voice and slowly opened his eyes. but seconds later, the military carried him far away. Later, when Toru and his father arrived at a shelter, Toru asked about Gamera's true identity. Kosuke explained that Todo was probably the reincarnation of the kaiju who sacrificed himself many years ago to save humanity. Then he warned Toru not to become too emotionally attached to the creature. Gamera fights monsters to protect humans, he explained. One day he'll eventually die in battle. But Toru completely refused to accept that. Meanwhile, Gamera was taken to a laboratory where scientists desperately tried to save his life. Deep beneath the ocean, researchers had discovered several mysterious red stones, and they believed Gamera's powers were somehow connected to them. Because of this, they injected the energy from those stones directly into his body. At the same time, Toru received a phone call from Mai's parents. They explained that after her surgery, Mai had been talking strangely in her sleep. The truth was that Mai had formed a mysterious spiritual connection with Gamera. Somehow, she realized that Gamera needed the glowing red stone to fully recover. The moment Toru understood that his friend needed help, he and his friends immediately rushed to retrieve the stone from Mai so they could restore Gamera's powers. The next morning when Kosuke woke up, he discovered that Toru had left behind a goodbye letter. The second he saw it, he immediately went after his son. Meanwhile, scientists continued trying everything possible to heal Gamera, but they could not understand why their methods were failing. Then suddenly, the giant kaiju opened his eyes. He had sensed that Zetas was crossing the ocean and heading toward the city once again. At the same time, doctors received an emergency warning that the lizard kaiju was moving directly toward their building. But it was obvious that Gamera still was not ready to fight. Suddenly, a gigantic tail smashed through the laboratory walls, throwing everyone violently to the ground. The entire building slowly began collapsing. Gamera instantly understood that Zetas had returned to finish their previous battle. People desperately started evacuating the building, while the lizard monster continued destroying the laboratory with its massive tail. Huge chunks of concrete came crashing down everywhere. At that exact moment, Toru had finally reached the city. But after seeing the news reports on television, he realized that the monster was attacking the entire area. Understanding that Mai's red stone might be the only thing capable of saving everyone, Toru immediately ran toward the hospital. However, he had no idea that all the patients had already been transferred to another medical center. Mai was among them, and her parents were taking her outside when suddenly, the glowing red stone beside her began shining brighter and brighter. Thankfully, all the doctors and patients managed to escape the hospital in time. Meanwhile, Gamera burst out from beneath the collapsed concrete debris. Now he looked even larger than before. The giant turtle roared furiously at the massive lizard monster standing before him. On the other side, Zetas continued destroying the city without mercy. Panic spread everywhere. Buildings collapsed one after another, while civilians desperately fled for their lives. Zetas suddenly rushed toward the escaping crowd and was just about to devour them when Gamera slammed into him from the side, knocking the monster away. Once again, the giant turtle had returned to protect humanity. Enraged, Zetas roared loudly and pushed Gamera backward with all his strength. Within moments, he began overpowering the turtle and violently smashed him into the ground. All of this happened right in front of Toru. Desperately, Toru screamed his friend's name at the top of his lungs, and hearing his voice gave Gamera the strength to continue fighting once more. Still, the enemy kept brutally beating him. That was when Toru realized there was no time left. He immediately sprinted toward the hospital and finally reached the subway station, running against the terrified crowd the entire way. Soon after, the boys arrived at the hospital building and rushed upstairs without wasting a second. But when they reached the rooms, they found nothing except empty beds. Mai was nowhere to be seen. Thankfully, Toru found his father there instead. Kosuke tried stopping him from risking his life any further and told him to forget about the kaiju. But Toru completely refused to give up. He could not bear to watch Gamera die the same way his predecessor once had. To him, Gamera was not just a monster. He was Toto, his beloved pet. And because of that, Toru once again ran back toward the battlefield. Meanwhile, Kosuke ordered the other boys to head straight to the refugee camp before he himself chased after his son. On the other side, Mai was resting inside a regular hospital room. From far away, she could still see the terrifying battle between the kaiju, but she was helpless. She wanted to help Todo, yet there was nothing she could do. Even so, she slowly tried to get out of bed and go toward the battlefield, but her parents immediately stopped her. They could not understand the emotions their daughter was going through. Just when all hope seemed lost, Mai noticed another young girl nearby. Somehow, it felt as if the girl could understand her through some mysterious connection. She promised Mai that she would deliver the glowing stone to the giant turtle. Without wasting another second, the girl rushed out of the building and started running toward the battlefield where the kaiju were fighting, while everyone else was desperately fleeing the area to save their lives. Meanwhile, the battle between the two monsters became even more terrifying. Gamera was completely overwhelmed by the enemy's attacks. Zetus had pierced the turtle's body with his long tongue, making Gamera scream in pain. At the same time, the giant lizard kept striking him over and over again with his tail. But even then, Gamera refused to give up. Finally, Zetus slammed the turtle onto the ground and began brutally beating him without mercy. But in that exact moment, Gamera found an opportunity to strike back. He bit down hard on his enemy and refused to let go. The lizard monster screamed in agony, but even he was unwilling to surrender. Dragging the turtle across the ground, Zetus climbed onto a building and slowly lifted Gamera high into the air. Then suddenly he dropped downward and used his tail to launch the turtle with incredible force, sending Gamera crashing straight into a massive building. Seeing his friend in danger, Toru screamed Gamera's name at the top of his lungs. But he had no idea that help from humans was rapidly making its way toward the battlefield. Meanwhile, the girl carrying the red stone got trapped in the middle of the terrified crowd. However, another boy grabbed the stone from her and continued running forward. A short while later, a police officer caught hold of the child and tried to save him from the chaos. But before stopping, the boy passed the glowing stone to another kid running nearby. Without fear, that child also accepted the responsibility. And just like that, the glowing red stone kept passing from one person to another, slowly making its way toward Gamera. All the children were working together to save humanity. Eventually, the stone finally reached Toru's friends, and they quickly brought it to him. The moment Toru held the stone in his hands, he immediately understood what he needed to do. He looked up toward the building where Gamera was still trapped. Then, Toru made a promise. This time, I won't let you die. Seeing his determination, even his father decided to help him. Together, the two ran toward the building. At the same time, Zetus also climbed higher because he wanted to finish Gamera once and for all. The monster soon reached the wounded turtle and attacked him again with his long tongue, making Gamera writhe in pain. Just then, Toru and his father finally entered the building. Kosuke immediately started clearing the fallen debris blocking the way so his son could reach Gamera in time. Without stopping, Toru sprinted up the stairs and finally reached the room where the giant turtle was trapped. The moment he saw his friend's condition, his heart shattered. Gamera was severely injured. Toru told him that he had brought the glowing stone so he could survive. He confessed that he had already watched his mother die with his own eyes, and he could not bear losing someone close to him ever again. But suddenly, Zetus arrived at the building and slammed his tail forward, violently pulling Gamera away from Toru. At that exact moment, Toru threw the glowing red stone directly into Gamera's mouth, and then the giant turtle began falling from the building. For a moment, it looked like everything was over, but seconds later, the truth became clear. The instant Gamera regained his full power, he activated his flying ability and stabilized himself in midair. Then suddenly, Gamera shot upward into the sky. The sheer force of his power filled the entire area with smoke and dust. All the children watched him with joy in their eyes because together, they had managed to save him. Moments later, Gamera began spinning rapidly like a giant top. Rotating at incredible speed, he charged directly toward the lizard monster and slammed into him with devastating force, sending the enemy flying backward. Soon after, Gamera landed heavily on the road below. This time, he had fully decided to end the battle once and for all. But suddenly, Zetus leaped upward from below and bit hard into Gamera's neck. His long tongue pierced deep into the turtle's body once again. The attack forced Gamera to start charging his energy another time. Meanwhile, Toru and his father watched the entire battle from a nearby building. At that moment, soldiers rushed toward them and ordered everyone to evacuate immediately because they believed Gamera was about to explode. But deep inside his heart, Toru knew that would not happen this time. Everyone held their breath as Gamera suddenly pushed the enemy backward. Then he grabbed the lizard monster's tongue tightly and brutally tore it apart piece by piece. Screaming in unbearable pain, Zetas stumbled backward helplessly. Finally, Gamera began preparing his last attack. His body started glowing brighter than ever before, and everything around him began burning from the overwhelming heat. Then, in the very next moment, Gamera fired a massive fireball directly at Zetas. A gigantic explosion shook the entire city. The monster was blown into countless pieces, leaving behind nothing except flames. At last, the battle was over. After achieving victory, Gamera collapsed onto the ground from exhaustion. Meanwhile, the military once again started moving toward him, planning to capture him. But before the soldiers could reach the giant turtle, Toru and his friends stood in their way. The children shouted at the top of their lungs, "He saved us today! Don't take away his freedom!" They begged Gamera to run away. Even Kosuke stepped forward and told the soldiers to let him go. Slowly, more and more children gathered in front of the military, and together, they protected their hero from becoming humanity's prisoner. After some time, Gamera slowly regained consciousness. The giant turtle looked toward Toru one final time. Then he quietly stood up and flew away once again. Everyone watched him leave with tears of happiness in their eyes. And within moments, Gamera disappeared into the sky.